Hello, everybody. This is my first time playing around with Facebook Live and making sure that I know what I'm doing. And my really good friend and fellow educator and board member, Katie Paetz, is joining me today. Katie and I go way back. We worked together in the Creighton School District. I was a middle school English language arts teacher, and Katie was a K-8 music teacher. So we ended up working in the same classroom during Ames testing, way back when we still had Ames testing.
Yep.
And we just became fast friends. I can't believe it took us almost a whole entire school year to get to know each other, but it's been like kindred spirits ever since then. Then later on in Katie's educational career, she ended up running for the Osborn School Board and winning her seat back in 2014. So Katie's always been a strong supporter of me, and I've been a strong supporter of Katie's. And so she just had a pretty great night last night at the Osborn board meeting. So I wanted to give Katie an opportunity to be able to talk about what has been going on in Osborn and what happened at your board meeting last night that you've been working now on for 3 years.
Yeah. So hi everyone. Thanks for having me. And yep, Jeannie and I go way back. Let's see. Well, first, just about me, I ran for office 6 years ago because I'm a teacher, and I thought educators should be a part of making education policy decisions, which is a huge reason why I support Jeannie in her run for the Maricopa County Superintendent position, because she's one of the greatest educators I know. And so that's why I ran. And yeah, so then after I ran in my first term, one of the first things I started working on was updating our non-discrimination policy, so that it included sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. And for all of you that know Osborn, it's located in the Melrose district. And so I thought, oh, this will be easy. This makes sense with our community. But I was new to board work, and it ended up taking 3 years and our board to kind of change, and the leadership to change to support that decision. And a big driving force, though, to update that policy back then was, and still is today, is that 50% of our students that identify as transgender end up trying to commit suicide or committing suicide. And that was a very real number to me, being in the queer community. And I just knew that our schools could do more. And so the non-discrimination policy, just to make sure that it was in our documents that this was a protected group of people, was important, but it wasn't enough. And so what I quickly did after we passed that policy is we then pivoted into talking about being trauma-informed schools, because that was something that affects all of our students. And so I just, for anyone that's out there that's doing political advocacy work, like it's very interesting how thing can very easily move into another thing. Vein of justice, then it makes sense. So that's what we did. And then about 3 years ago, we wrote a resolution, or I wrote a resolution, and it was approved by the board to be a trauma-informed district. And in that resolution, we not only called, upon the legislators and other government entities to support this type of work, but to also then we put on ourselves not only to train our teachers and our staff in this work, but then also we wanted to write policy so that we could institutionalize the systemic change of being trauma-informed in our schools. So started writing policy, and I wrote a policy and then collaboratively worked on it with our staff, and then consulted with experts in the field. And after that, took it to our attorney, and then took it back to the board this last year. and got more collaborative input. And we did our first reading about 2 months ago, and then COVID hit. And then so it kind of got stalled a little bit in between. But then after we got our psychologist's input and support, we brought it back to the board, and last night we approved it. And so I'm really very, very proud of our district for not only like walking the walk, but talking the talk. And the process that we did it by, you know, took time and seemed slow, but I have very full confidence that our staff and that everybody that's in the organization and in our community understands that understands the work that we're doing and supports it.
So, okay, I think I heard you say that you had already been offering trainings to staff about, you know, ACEs, trauma-informed care, that kind of stuff. So really, what's the difference, I guess, between being a district that provides that kind of professional development for its teachers to then having a policy that that makes you a trauma-informed district? Because I think there are a lot of districts that are doing that kind of work where they're offering these kinds of professional development that have to do with social emotional needs of our students, the mental health of our students. So what's the difference between just offering that PD and then turning that into policy?
Well, first, the reason why we offered the professional development, actually that came through the collaborative process and from our association, our union. That was their piece to in the resolution was, you know, if the district's resolved to do this, then we need training to do it. And that was one of their huge contributions. So go unions. They're there, and that was a really important part. Like, that's a really great example of how unions help our districts. Then so the reason why we turned it into policy, and the difference between let's just have trainings and then let's have an actual policy is, you know, when you're sitting on a board, or even when you're teaching in a classroom or in a school district and with a principal or anyone like that, all of those, anyone that's sitting on the board or the superintendent or the principals or the teachers, all of those people can change. These seats can change. And so when you're sitting in that position and you're thinking about systemic change, you need to think about, okay, if everything changes, what do we have to make sure that this organization continues on with this work after 1 or 2 of us is gone, 5 of us is gone, 7 of us is gone? What is the thing that's going to actually create that pivotal trajectory change? If you just have trainings, then those trainings and the offerings of those trainings are, you have to have somebody that's going to drive that work. They're dependent on a person driving that work and making that decision and supporting it. If you create policy around it, and it's actually voted on and instilled in your documents, and you have some teeth with it too, where there's accountability measures and communication measures and funding for it, then if all of the seats change and all the people change, you still have to live by that policy, because that is the law. And if the organization wants to change its trajectory, so it creates an actual like solidified trajectory until somebody comes in and changes the policy again. So that's why it was important for systemic change. I think if you just have trainings and the trainings are dependent on people being in the system to do them and to enact that, I don't believe that that's systemic change. That's temporary. If you actually put it into policy, then you're actually creating the system. You're changing parts in the system to actually create a new system, a new machine that is serving students differently.
Right. Yeah. I had a principal, and she would talk about how we need to make sure that things are in policy, that they need to be policy driven and not people driven, because that happens a lot in school sites, right? You have this amazing teacher that does, 1,000 different things, which are all wonderful, But if that teacher takes a job somewhere else, well then poof, any of that kind of culture that teacher provided, if it's not written into policy, if it's not a system-wide kind of change, they can just very easily dissolve. So I love the fact that, because I think right now, ACEs, trauma-informed care resiliency, a lot of districts are really putting social emotional learning at the forefront, but without the policy to back it up, that could change overnight. Like you said, you get a new superintendent, you have a whole new board that gets elected, or some other type of leadership change, then you putting it into policy has guaranteed that the kids, not just now in Osborn, but future students at Osborn will have that same kind of trauma-informed policy in place until, you know, if somebody gets really mad at it and everybody gets booted out and you get a new superintendent, they can make, you know, kind of like maybe how somebody likes to overturn everything that Obama does. I'm not going to mention any names, but, you know, there are those people who might, you know, just want to burn it all down. But otherwise, you've made sure that that community has that kind of curriculum and those resources and that kind of professional development. And I really think it's wonderful. I always say that you're my spirit animal, and you really are. I just want to take a minute and acknowledge we got a couple of people watching. There's Elvis Richardson. We've got Nick Martin, who's a fantastic candidate in Phoenix Elementary School District, and Jeff Fortney, who is an amazing candidate in Cave Creek School District. So I just want to let you guys know that if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask Amy, Katie or me, then please, by all means, go ahead and ask away. So let's talk for a second, since we have some school board members here. What have you learned over the years of being on your school board? And how has it changed you as an educator? Sorry, that's a really meaty question.
Yeah, and I didn't get any of the questions beforehand. So this is off the cuff. No, but it's good. This is my gut response to it. I couldn't like rethink it. So what have I learned? You know, like I said before, I wanted to run for the board because I thought educators should be a part of making education policy decisions. I still believe that's true. But what I really learned was the role of the community. I realized that once I was in the board seat and was not in the majority of opinion for a long time, I realized how much people in schools, like how much people in schools, and there's a lot of service mentality in schools, and it's great, and it should be there, and there's a lot of really good intentions. The thing is, though, is like our schools, once I ran for office and then was on the board, I realized that our schools are there to be of service to the community, and the people within the schools need to be of service to the community. And to be fully of service, it means the community needs to be in on the collaborative process when decisions are made. And they need to be in on that process from the beginning. Like, let's say the CARES Act right now is coming up, and schools are going to be infused with a large sum of money to be able to support us through a pandemic America. You know, a collaborative approach to that would be that the school district, the superintendent who's charged with administering the board's vision and values, would then educate the community, educate the board and the families and the parents and people on committees with what this money is and what it can be used for. And then after educating that part, because that's an empowering process in itself. After that, then engaging in, then the board and the superintendent need to engage in a process that gets input on what is going on in the community, what are the needs of the families that live in the community, and then how does, and then yeah, just what is actually going on, and actually getting real data, real conversations, seeing it with their own eyes, and getting widespread amount of input on that, on what's going on and where are the needs. And then once you've done those 2 points, bringing together people that want to be part of solutions. And so including people in a collaborative process where it says, okay, here's what this money is for. Here's what we can use it for. Here's what we've said that the needs are. What can be some of the solutions? And having the community a part of that entire process from the beginning to the end, to be in that decision-making seat, and then come to a collaboration on the end. Does that mean that the community gets everything that it wants? Probably not. Does that mean that the superintendent and the school district gets everything that it wants? Probably not. But at the same time, they get the system gets what it needs, and our kids get what it needs, and the community is empowered to be in control of our kids' education, which is why our school districts have been entrusted with that. And so there's a very real reason why there are school boards and why we are elected as the board, as the overseeing body of the superintendent, who is our one employee, and then that superintendent is charged with administering decisions. And so, and I know this because I learned this from Osborn. Osborn is a very collaborative district. They have we have a saying where it's no decision gets made alone. Nothing's done in a silo. You're always including at least one other person. And just when I was a teacher, I think I came with a lot of ideas on how I thought education should be and what I thought the community that I taught in needed. I didn't live in the same community though that I taught in. And so what I had to realize though is that if the community's values and vision is different than mine and I work there, then I need to get in line with that, or I need to find somewhere else to work. The community and the families and the parents that we work with need to be honored in a way that in a way that I don't think the system really creates very well. And so it definitely took a lot of humility on my part, because I was full of good intentions. But if I didn't focus on taking a deep breath, building relationships first, and listening to where my strengths matched up with the actual needs that were there instead of my perceived needs, and then waiting to be trusted to be able to do the work, I think I could have been a lot more effective in my early years. And that's any kind of advice that I'd give anyone in schools is, you have to have humility, and you have to have the courage to give up control to really do true service that our kids deserve.
Yeah, I feel the same way about my service on the board. I think you and I, maybe it's common for every school board member. We were like Miley Cyrus. We came in like a wrecking ball,
Yeah.
we were like, this is how you should do it. I'm a teacher. This is how you should do it. And that's not how school board work really happens. And, it even makes me think of Kirsten Sinema. I still remember, hearing her speak at a political event and talking about her first couple of years in the legislature, about how she was like, I was so good at giving soapbox speeches, but then nobody wanted to talk to me because I was so volatile sometimes, to the point where I wasn't going to hear anybody else's way of doing anything. And so for like the first couple of years that she was in the legislature, she didn't get much done. And it was, you have to figure out, who are my allies, where are the needs of the community, and how can I do this in a thoughtful way that truly represents my community? And really, I think that your ability to be self-aware and to always be thinking about, because you always have gone to community first, whether it's as a classroom teacher or as a board member. And maybe, you had a couple stumbling blocks, but really you are grounded in the community in which you live.
I had a lot. I've learned all of these lessons firsthand. Yeah.
So and then Scott Brown joined us as well. So I want to say hi to Scott. But since we do have a couple of new school board candidates on the Facebook Live right now, is there any advice that you would like to give to them about school board service and what you wish you could have changed, perhaps?
Yeah, I would have been quiet a lot longer in the beginning. I would have sat and listened for a lot longer. And I would have, but then my personality though is to jump in and figure out while I'm doing it. The thing with school board service, though, is when you're in a meeting, it's a public meeting. And so everybody's watching you learn how to swim. And that's just part of the reality. So I would have probably, I would have built more relationships earlier on. And sorry, that's our Siamese cat here who wants to be on Facebook Live as well. He agrees. So I would say that. I would say listen and build relationships first. But then also know your strengths. One thing that I've learned about myself, though, is I think I wanted to be the person that brought people together. And that's not in my cards. That's not how my story is played out. I'm the person that sees that holds the vision and sees the injustice and sees where it needs to be changed. And I'm the person that holds that so strongly and continues to return to it. Like, I just don't give up. That people eventually, it's first they fight you, or first they ignore you, then they fight you, then you win. That's been that has been the trajectory for the biggest policy changes that we've made, or program changes. That's exactly how it went when we decided to move away from the SRO program in our schools as well. Was first I was ignored, then I was actually laughed at, then I was ignored, then I was fought, and then we won. And so, but it was, I think I though had to learn that, there are just going to be people that are not going to agree with you, and that is absolutely fine. And that is their right. And that's what's amazing about America and our democracy, is that people can disagree. You don't need to win everybody over to move policy that changes, that changes your organization for the better. You don't have to get 100%. You just have to get that 50% or that board majority vote. You just have to get enough people on board to actually make the change. And so my strength has been just holding on to that boat and not letting it go, and not letting people forget about it. And then eventually the life events happen, and they all realize that that vision was right all along. So and I think just playing the long game too. If you're in the schools and you're a teacher, or you're working in a service job, you kind of see that you see change a lot faster, because the nature of the work is just very immediate. When you're in a governing position, it's systemic and it's larger, and you're managing more people, and it's not as fast. Anything that like I said, the non-discrimination policy, I thought was going to be, this will be easy. It'll take 3 months and we'll be done with it. It took 3 years. So just realizing that things will take longer, and be patient with that.
So I have to tell you, Maricruz Castillo is watching.
Yay!
Yeah, from Gateway School. So shout out to Maricruz. Remember what's her sister? Do you remember her sister's name? It's gonna drive me crazy now. Anyway, I love the fact that we have a former student who's watching us right now. So cool. So let's talk for a minute about COVID and how your district, here we were you guys already on spring break when the stay-at-home order came?
Yeah.
So tell me, just give me briefly, like what were the first things that you thought of? And then what were the things that your district did?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think when COVID first happened, that was the first thing that I thought of as a teacher was, oh no, we're not going back to school. Wow, there's a lot of decisions. Like, there's a lot of uncharted territory. And I started doing Facebook Live events with my students, because I just wanted to be a continuing kind of face for them if they needed it. As a governing board member, my first thought was like, I'm really grateful for our superintendent, because he was the person that was going to have to make a lot of decisions and pivot an organization into a new situation. And so I think I was just really grateful.
Remind me of your superintendent's name again. It's
Dr. Michael Robert.
Michael Robert. Yeah, we did on a panel a few years back on ASBA, and I was really impressed. And then I heard some really good things about him and some of the statements he made at, I believe it was like an equity conference or something, where he kind of stood up. I don't remember what happened, but that was kind of the turning point, I think, for you guys and getting rid of your SRO. I don't remember exactly what was happening in the news, but I remember him being very vocal about like, I can't, we really have to re-examine this. So he's a fantastic superintendent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking of your students, because I've been in your classroom, and Ms. Paetz has one of the most warm, welcoming classrooms, even though when I help her set it up.
You even set up the yellow wall.
I did. It was a hot mess because I am not an elementary school teacher. So, but
it was great. There's a lot of staples in it.
The culture, the minute you walk in, is very strong. So yeah, thinking about your kids, you don't have that closure to be able to even say goodbye or welcome them back from spring break. What were your thoughts as a school board member and the kids that you serve in the Osborn School District?
I mean, the first thing was, how are we going to get them food? Yeah. Like, how are we going to make sure they have food? How are we going to make sure that they have support, that they have some kind of structure, that they have their needs met? I think that was the first thing, and to our district leadership and our food service workers and everyone that worked throughout the pandemic. They served so many meals, and then they were even driving meals to places, which 100% upped how many meals were getting served and taken, was actually taking them to apartment complexes, to homes that needed them, because some of those gaps do exist with people not being able to get to the schools. So that was number one. Then after that, I think it was, just how are our teachers gonna be able to communicate with our students, and how are they gonna do that? And we've been really fortunate that actually PBS has a partnership with Osborn and the Roosevelt School District, where our teachers are on PBS doing lessons on there. And I think that's going to go on through the summer too. So we were able to do that. And then, our teachers created video lessons and stuff like that for our kids, and communicated with parents, that way, I think. So that was the next step. And now it's kind of, and then it was technology. Like, how do we get technology into our kids' hands, and the internet? And one of the things with the internet, the hurdle with getting internet the way that the state did it this year and the internet companies did it, was there was a whole lot of rumors going around, and also it wasn't like the onboarding process into that. Some places seem to be requiring an ID. Some places said that they required a deposit. Some places, there was a language barrier. There were just structural barriers for some of our families that weren't used to navigating in that space. In an incredibly stressful pandemic emergency time, crisis time. So it was kind of like, how do we overcome that? And our superintendent, again, called up Cox, talked to someone in Cox, and was able to find a way to get all of our families pre-approved for internet without having to jump through a lot of those hurdles. And so all the family had to do was call up, and if they were on a list, then they were able to get internet free for the remainder of the school year. So, again, how do we, as as the placeholders, as the power holders in a system, use our power to help the people that aren't at that place? That's the role of a board member. And that's the role of a superintendent and of leadership. It's to be able to do the things that the direct service workers can't necessarily do, don't have the bandwidth to do. That's why these people get paid more money. That's why they get more recognition. That's why they have more power, because they should be able to change those things, eliminate those hurdles from everybody else's lives. That's the role of this office, and that's the role of those leadership positions. And if you're in that position and you're not removing hurdles, then what are you doing? That's kind of what we were dealing with. And Now we're just looking at, what does school look like in a pandemic America coming up with a whole lot of uncertainties, and and so that's kind of like the next thing that we're trying to understand and gear up for. And again, I believe that it's through a collaborative process where the community is educated that you can get to the best solutions.
Right on. I just want to acknowledge real quick too that Karen Miller, Miss Miller from Gateway School is on Facebook Live right now. I believe you have first grade, second grade.
Yes, I
Somebody
remember. Hi.
Because
Yay, hi.
if I have to teach first or second graders, none of us are going to have a good day. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh no, they're lovely. They're so wise.
Really?
And to the point. Yeah.
But this is coming from somebody who prefers middle schoolers, so there's probably something very wrong with me anyway. So we're 4:00 right now. I'm just so grateful to you, Katie Paetz, for just always being somebody who I admire and respect. You're amazing at building relationships with kids. I think you're one of the very best board members I've ever met in my entire life. And you are a real champion for public education and for good policy in public education. So I want to make sure before we cut this off, but like, if somebody wanted to get a hold of your trauma-informed policy, is that on board docs? Like, how is there some way? Did you put that on your? Because I know you updated your Facebook last night. I think there's a text of that in there on your. Okay. So
yeah.
And is that public? So if somebody did want to see it, would they be able to? I don't want to open you up to a whole bunch of people trying to, come at you. But I want to make sure that if there are other districts who would like to adopt this kind of policy, where would be the best place to access it?
So no, I want everybody come at me. That's fine.
Okay.
So if you want the policy right now, it's on my Facebook page and it's just in a post. I just copied and pasted it all right there. It'll also be on my website, which is coming out very soon. Just waiting on a few, like a logo and stuff like that. And it'll be on my blog on there. So I also write for Educators for Student Success. And I'm published with them. And then I've also written some other pieces that have been published. And so I've just kind of took all my writing and put it into one place, plus a couple new pieces I've done. And so that'll be up on my blog and my, right now it's a coming soon, but it's katiepaetz.com, and that should be up hopefully in the next week. And I'll definitely have the policy in there and also kind of the process that we used. I'll be writing about it.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for helping me to get more comfortable with the technology and for being a fantastic first guest. And I really want to have you back some other time where we can just talk about like the trash television that we watch or some other topic. It doesn't have to always be about education.
Definitely. All
right. Well,
we should just have a whole,
Yeah, for sure. Because we both like some trash TV.
That's good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate you. And to everybody else out there who took the time to watch this, thank you to all of you as well. katiepaetz.com coming soon. If you want to get her trauma-informed policy, you can go to her Facebook page. And I, of course, am the candidate for Maricopa County School Superintendent. And you can find me on jc4mc.com. JC, the number 4 mc.com.
Go for Jeanne and tell your friends.
Yeah, and like maybe make a donation.
Yeah.
Bye, Katie. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Take care.